ladies and gentlemen, we have Cameron Riker here. And Cameron Riker, you might not know, obviously you're familiar with his channel because everybody who's watching this is subscribed to his channel. But you might not know that he gives very good life advice, coaching advice. Cameron, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so what I've been doing lately is putting together a coaching program specifically designed for people who were like me in their early 20s, people who are maybe coming into the faith for the first time or maybe getting back into their faith after a long time away. And they're ready now to be husbands and fathers, at least they feel ready in a certain sense, but they don't feel like they have the equipment. They don't feel like they have the knowledge. They don't feel like they have any idea how to lead a family to heaven. And so that's what the coaching program is for. It's for young men who want to become husbands and fathers one day. And we're calling it Terror of Demons Academy because St. Joseph is the man. If you want to become a good husband and a good father, you absolutely have to have a devotion to St. Joseph, in my opinion.
St. Joseph was my confirmation saint, and he's awesome. So I relate to that.
How old were you when you got confirmed? Because a lot of people like me, I was young when I got confirmed. I was, a teenager. I wasn't taking my faith seriously. So I chose St. John the Evangelist. And looking back, that's been the best choice I possibly could have made. It was definitely God's grace guiding me. But I was such an idiot. I chose St. John the Evangelist because John was my middle name and I didn't know anything about any of the saints. I was like, that's where I was as a 16-year-old. So yeah, nobody is too far gone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just got confirmed this year. So I was 29 when I got
Whoa,
confirmed. Yeah. And
praise God.
I didn't put a lot of thought into it either. Really what happened was I went to a rosary march where we just kind of walk around this beautiful church and pray the rosary and through like a megaphone so the entire city can hear us praying the rosary, whether they like it or not.
Like Jericho right there.
I love it. Yeah. And there were some prayers to St. Joseph in there, and it was close to my confirmation. So I had been thinking about, I hadn't given thought to it before. So I was like, oh, wait, I really need to figure this out. And then there were some prayers to St. Joseph in there that just really hit me hard for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
and then I went home. I want to learn more about St. Joseph. So I looked up, I found a documentary on YouTube about him and how um, there wasn't a lot of focus or devotion to him in the past. And more recently, I believe it was Pope Francis he declared like a year of St. Joseph or something like that. And then just learning about some of the miracles that are attributed to him and things like that really, really spoke to me. And I think he's, like you said, a great example to men who are trying to be good husbands, good fathers.
Yeah.
And those are two things that I would love to be. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
this guy is awesome.
There's actually, you'll hear this sometimes. Grandmas and stuff will say that you don't choose your confirmation saint chooses you.
Hmm.
And at first you hear that and it's like, okay, that's cute. That's a nice sentiment. But if you look at how it works in God's providence and God's foreknowledge, that's actually the case, right? Jesus says it was not you who chose me, but it was I who chose you out of the world. And those saints share in the power and the glory of Christ now. And so if a saint decides that he wants to be somebody's patron, or if God decides that he wants to appoint a certain saint as that person's patron, then he'll do it by, just like you said, right, putting a conviction on your heart or a desire to learn more about a certain saint. He'll put that on your heart and then move you to choose that saint. So that's really beautiful that Saint Joseph chose you, and Saint John chose
Hmm.
me, even though I wasn't even I wasn't even remotely doing it devoutly at that point. But he has been a real godsend. And then
Nice.
yeah, St. Joseph is the man. He's just the man. If you want to read
Yeah.
a great book on it, Father Sebastian Walsh's book, he's the guy I interviewed. Father Sebastian Walsh has the best book on St. Joseph that I've ever read. So if you want that, it's called The Man Closest to Christ. I can't recommend it enough. I've given it to several of my friends, and then one of my friends texted me back after he started reading it and said, "Bro, I started crying reading this book."
Nice.
It's that good.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Well, today we're gonna put some of your advice giving to the test and see, what kind of advice you would give people in various situations.
Let's do it.
So the title of this Reddit post is 35 years old, lost in life. Many such cases. Let's see what they have to say. From the outside, I have everything. An apartment I own, a beautiful and caring partner, family are amazing and supportive, great job and flexible hours. However, I have this lingering feeling deep inside me that I am just unhappy. I am in a management, fully corporate 9 to 5 job, which is something I never thought I'd do nor want, and a homeowner. As my partner says, and I agree, it has all worked out way better than I could ever imagine, as I never thought any of the above would be possible for me. But yet I have this deep feeling of unhappiness. I feel there is something out there for me. My partner and I want to have kids someday, and as we're both getting older, feel it needs to be sooner rather than later. But I don't want to have a child if I feel this way about myself, nor haven't gone to do my last travel either. What would you say to this person?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think it's just a testimony to the fact that all the riches in the world can't fill the hole in the human heart that was designed for God. There's a lot of hurt, I think, in this person's words, and a little bit of confusion as to why that hurt is there. It's the anti-gospel of the world in a certain sense. Is you get the money, you get the girl, you get the house, you're able to take care of yourself, you're able to take care of whatever you want. You can have it, right? But the deepest, most fundamental desire in the male heart, in a man's heart, is to sacrifice himself, is to lay down his life for another, right? There's a reason, you read War and Peace, you read some of these great works of literature that point this out, but men naturally have a desire to swear fealty to a king, right? That's what they want, is to be a good and faithful servant for the right cause and to sacrifice their lives for the right cause. There's nobody that watches a patriotic American movie and sees a soldier who's willing to give up their life for their country and for their family. Nobody watches a movie like that and then leaves the movie theater thinking, man, I'm glad somebody else is doing that. Right? Everybody, every single man who watches a movie like that thinks, I want something like that. I want something that's not just worth living for, but something that's worth dying for. William Wallace has one of my favorite quotes of all time. He says, all men die, not all men really live. And what does it mean to really live? It means that you continually and slowly and painfully offer your life in the service of other people. If you are living your life and you're just for yourself, right, then you have become God in a certain sense. You're the final cause of your entire existence. That's not good enough. That's not what you were made for. So if I could talk to this guy in person, I think I would just start by sharing with him the basics of the gospel, because it's possible he's completely ignorant about that,
Hmm.
right? Every man wants to give his life in the service of others. And the way that you find perfect fulfillment and peace in this life and in the next is by devout, honest, persevering service of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So that would be the first thing I would say to him off the top of my head.
Amen. Yeah, I remember as a young gentleman. I was not a gentleman when I was young, but I did have this feeling that I wanted to dedicate myself to a cause, and so I got very involved in activism. I got involved in like anything I could attach myself to, really, that would make me feel like I'm doing something with my life. I'm serving some kind of a greater purpose. I think that's something that everybody wants, whether they realize it or not. And when we ignore that, we end up unhappy with our life and really unsure of why we're unhappy. Because from the outside, everything looks like it's great, but if we're not serving a deeper purpose, like you said, everything kind of feels empty.
Yeah, this I ask a lot of young men this question because I'm curious about what their answer is, and the one that's kind of popped up over and over again has kind of surprised me. But I asked the question, what is the biggest struggle that young men face these days? Is it a lack of faith? Is it stuff on the internet? Is it lust? Is it like what's the biggest issue that young men face these days? And the answer that comes up over and over again that kind of surprises me is that it's a lack of purpose, right? Men
Yeah.
feel purposeless. And I think they've substituted, our modern culture has substituted purpose with convenience, right? Now we don't have anything to fight for because everything is given to us. And so it's robbed men of their desire to lay down their lives for another because they're just settling for ersatz comfort, right? That's what they're
Hmm.
doing. And so, yeah, that's something that men say over and over again. It's kind of surprised me how often that answer's come up because it's not something I would have thought of on my own.
Yeah. And what would you say about this idea that I don't want to have a child if I feel this way about myself, nor haven't gone to do my last travel?
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to put off having children, either because they feel like they're too immature themselves or because they feel like they have something else they want to accomplish or something else they want to buy before they have a child. Because having a child is a tremendous sacrifice. I've got two kids now, and it's incredible how selfish I was and didn't even realize it before having kids, right? And I was at that
Yeah.
point living a Catholic life, married in the church, praying the rosary, frequenting the sacraments, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a reason that marriage is a vocation. It's because by having children, you are forced to grow in virtue basically overnight, right? Your needs, your desires, your comfort, it all becomes secondary to taking care of your kid or kids and your wife. So it is a tremendous sacrifice, right?
Hmm.
I was talking to my wife the other day, and both kids were screaming, and there was probably a mess on the floor, and it was just one of those minutes, right? Anybody who's a parent knows that there's times where it's just like, okay. And I looked at her and I was like, I don't agree with it. I do not agree with it, but I understand why people don't have kids,
Hmm.
right? Because there are moments where it's just like your cross becomes so heavy and there's two children screaming and you have an increased financial burden and your wife becomes, sleep deprived and is kind of a zombie some of the time because she's up all night with the kids. And, that's all part of it. And that's how you grow in virtue is through those crosses. So I get it. But I would also say this is even with all those crosses, even with everything you have to suffer as a parent, you've probably never met a dad who says, "Man, I wish I hadn't had my third son." Right? Or, "Man, I
Yeah.
wish my second kid didn't exist." Right?
Hmm.
In the moment, things can get bad. And if you zoom in just on the crisis points, then yeah, it looks like kids are a terrible idea. But if you zoom out and see the fact that as a man, especially as a Catholic man and a Catholic woman, you have the opportunity to create a soul that's going to be enjoying the vision of God for all of eternity. Just a brief theology excerpt here, but according to Augustine and Aquinas, God originally made the nine choirs of angels. And some of the theologians think that God wouldn't have created man if there weren't the fall of the angels. But the angels fall, a third of them fall from heaven. And then God creates man, or God uses that as the occasion to create man so that they can fill the spots of the demons that they vacated whenever they fell. So that's kind of what's going on in the big picture. And by being married and by having children, you have an opportunity to help God to accomplish his plan. You have an opportunity to restore and augment the heavenly hierarchy that Satan decimated at the beginning of history whenever he fell. So there's a tremendous amount of dignity to that. And it's the most worthwhile sacrifice that you can make, right? Other than becoming maybe a religious or a monk or something like that. But generally, for the normal person, the way that you find fulfillment, the way that you lay your life down for a bigger cause, which we talked about, is by sacrificing yourself for your wife and for your children, right? So, yeah, don't be afraid. If you're pursuing God, Jesus says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you." And he meant it. He really meant it. If you are doing your best to serve God, even if that means bringing children into the world, even if you're not sure that you're ready, right? But if you're honestly doing that with the intention of serving God, then God's going to take care of all the other things. C.S. Lewis says, put
Nice.
first things first, get first and second things. Put second things first, lose first and second things. And that's
Hmm.
just simply the way it works.
Wow. Yeah, that's really well put. So, when I ask this question, what do you think about people who want to wait to have kids? My instinct is like, no, that's stupid. You need to just take the responsibility. Stop caring about this next thing that you want to do. Like, be an adult. And then you come at it with such a compassionate approach where you're like, I get it, but it's also a very beautiful experience. And I don't know, I appreciate that because I wanted to be mean, but you actually did it in a way that's probably more helpful.
Well, it's just, I'm definitely not the exemplar. People should follow Jesus, not me. But just one of the things, it's October. I've said this in a couple interviews I've been on now, but it's October now. And it's the month of the Rosary. And so I've been praying all four mysteries of the Rosary every day. And if anybody wants to join me, I
Nice.
strongly encourage you to do that. It is worth it. It is 100% worth it, and you will not regret it. But every day I get to the third sorrowful mystery and I meditate on the face of Christ. So he's veiled and they're spitting on him and they're beating him. And they say, "Prophesy for us. Who is it that struck you?" They're just mocking him. That's what they're doing. They're just mocking him. And I just imagine the moment when the veil is lifted from his face and he looks at the soldiers. I just imagine Christ's eyes in that moment. What is his facial expression? He's looking at them. What is he saying with his face and with his eyes? And just seeing the amount of compassion, the amount of love, the amount of mercy, the complete lack of a desire for vengeance or vindication in his
Hmm.
eyes. That's something that's just really, yeah, I think it's helped me to just be more meek and more understanding with where people are at and less accusatory and condemning and things like that. Just that moment. So that's something that's been really
Hmm.
powerful on my heart, even during this month of October. And so, yeah, if you're not praying the rosary daily, start with five. And if you are doing five, join me. All four mysteries is a wonderful thing to do. You will not regret it.
I think I'll join you in
All right, let's go. Got another one.
that. Yeah,
Gabby After Hours is he's the guy that kind of inspired me to start doing that in October. I don't know
he's
if you've
great.
ever
I
watched his
love that
channel.
guy. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fingers crossed. I have a long shot connection. Maybe he'll be on my channel sometime soon.
That would be awesome. Every time I listen to an interview with him and Matt Fradd on Pints with Aquinas, I cry at least one point during the interview.
Mm.
Like every time.
Yeah. I was making this point to, I think, my wife maybe the other day, but I was saying, so I met Father Ripperger, I think in May. We had a conversation and chatted, but he said something that really, really stood out to me. He said that you could spend all the time you want preparing the best homily, the best talk, the best lecture, have all the sources, have all the everything, the language, the analogies, everything, get it perfect. But
Hmm.
he said, if you don't pray for the people who are going to hear that lecture, hear that homily, hear that sermon, if you don't pray for them, it's going to fall on deaf ears. You have to put the work in on the back end, make sacrifices, and pray for the people who are going to hear your talk so that they can receive the truth that they're meant to receive out of that. And I think Gabby, just whenever I watch his stuff, I feel like my guardian angel is answering Gabby's prayers that he said for me, right? Like I
Dang.
feel my heart moving in a way that I
Yeah.
don't whenever I listen to certain other, Catholic YouTubers or something. Maybe they have good information, but I don't feel my heart being moved in the same way. So I think
Wow.
Gabby does an incredible job. I think he's making all kinds of sacrifices and prayers behind the scenes that we don't even see or know about. And that's why he's so effective in his ministry. Jason Everett, on my interview with him the other day, he said that in the apostolate, the currency that is offered is suffering. The currency that buys souls is suffering offered with love.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I've had
Dude,
a
that was
decent amount of
awesome.
caffeine this morning. It's sips with Sarah, so I was like,
Yeah,
I
I
just got
got us.
black coffee. That's what I'm rocking. But
Oh man, I got a little bit of milk in mine. Maybe too much milk.
I I like I like milk in my coffee, maybe even more than cream in my coffee, which my wife
Hmm.
thinks I'm crazy for. But yeah, it's Friday, so I was like, we'll just go black coffee.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
All right, we got another one here. Where are we trying to get through all the struggle and hard work? Hi, all. I've been wondering for a long time now, what are we working for? Or what are we trying to achieve in life for which we are going through all the struggle and difficulties? Yes, money is important and is a necessity for survival, but for all others who have enough money to suffice their needs, what makes you pursue a better job, more money? All those buying multiple houses for investment purposes? What will you get by buying those extra plots of land? What do we humans try to achieve in life? This
Mm.
sounds like a Billie Eilish song. What was I made for?
Yeah. Yeah. There's something I think beautiful happening in the culture, and at first glance maybe it doesn't seem beautiful, but it will be. There's just this arising awareness of the vapidity of the world and the fact that nothing in this world can make you happy. Going all the way back to St. Augustine, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee, O Lord. And it reminds me here of what St. Paul says. St. Paul says that if Christ has not risen from the dead, then we, Christians, are the most of all men to be pitied, right? Because if you're living the secular gospel, well, you'll end up with riches and houses and money and security, even though you won't be very happy in the next life, perhaps. But if you're living the Christian gospel, well, then you lose the money, you lose the fame, you lose all those things. At least you lose them to a certain extent. And in the next life, if Christ has not risen, you end up the same as everybody else. So it's really just a matter of where are you heading, right? You have to ask yourself, what's the thing in your life that you love the most? What's the thing in your life that all else is sacrificed for? Because every man has something, right? For good men, the answer is Jesus Christ. For bad men, the answer is anything else.
Hmm.
That's what the Catholic Church teaches. There's one way to be a good man. There's one way to the Father, and that is through Jesus Christ. So if there's anything in your heart that you love more than Christ Jesus, then it needs to be surgically removed. It needs to be detached from you. And that's the only way that you'll find happiness and fulfillment, right? Like, you know, sometimes people softball questions like this and and I try to be as compassionate as I can, but it's like, if you want to be happy, you have to have Jesus. There is no other way around it. You cannot escape that reality. You can run and you can hide, but it's going to be waiting for you as soon as the distractions settle and as soon as you can see clearly again, right? So, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you keep searching for money, why you keep searching for houses, right? You're just trying to avoid something that I think that this person knows deep down in their heart, or at least I hope they know it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that all sounds nice, but it's also defended by scientific evidence. They've done studies on, are religious people happier than secular people who don't practice any religion? And they found, yes, the more you go to church, the more you pray, the more you read scripture, the more religious you are, the happier you're going to be. Happiness in a sense of like a deep peace, not as in you're going to be like laughing constantly, because that would just be kind of creepy. But you'll have a deep sense of peace. You'll be more satisfied with life. You'll have a better marriage. You'll have better relationships. And
Yeah.
they've even found that in Eastern countries where Christianity is not so popular, not as popular, at least in some, right? Like in Japan and in China, people who are more religious in those countries, who follow religions maybe like Buddhism, Shintoism, those people are less happy the more religious they are, actually, which is really strange. So they haven't done like a comprehensive study on like, are Christians happier than Muslims or Buddhists and stuff like that, but the evidence does seem to suggest that if you are more religious, you'll be more happy, and particularly if you are more religious in your Christian faith, then you'll be more happy.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that sometimes there's this misconception that holy people have to give up a lot of things and they choose to be holy instead of happy. But that's
Yeah,
the exact opposite of how it works. The
right.
closer that you draw to Christ and the holier that you become, even if you have to give up all the things that you think are fun now, the closer you get to Christ, the more fulfillment and joy you have in your life every time, every single time, right?
Mhm.
And so the sacrifices that you make, once you get to a point where you're enjoying some of the sweetness of Christ, you look back at all the things you used to do and you say, man, I was enslaved to that for so long. I wish I had given that up earlier. I wish I had known this earlier and I would have sacrificed everything to pursue Christ. So, yeah, I'm really
Yeah.
happy that the science validates that. I haven't seen those studies, but I 100% believe it.
Yeah, I did a TikTok on it back in my TikTok days, and I cite all the studies there. So I'll be dropping a link to those studies in the description of this video too. Speaking of TikTok, I have some TikToks lined up. Uh,
Oh boy.
I want you to like grade these pieces of advice and just tell me
Okay.
good advice, bad advice. So this is life advice for young men, part two. So we missed part one, unfortunately, but we'll get into part two. Don't get a girlfriend before you have your life together. How do you feel about that?
Yes, so there's two mistakes that we can make on this front. The first mistake is thinking that we have to be perfect before we're ready to date, right? You don't have to be perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm married. A part of me becoming perfect, the way that I draw closer to Christ and become holy is through the vocation of marriage. You don't need to be perfect to be married. On the flip side of that, you also can't be a complete disaster and expect that you're going to bring somebody else onto the ship. That's not how that works either.
Yeah.
So there's a middle ground for people who are seeking to get married. And there's a few litmus tests that you can do um, to kind of know where you are on that scale. The first thing is if you are still struggling chronically with an addiction to filth on the internet and you're watching that frequently, you are not ready to have a girlfriend. Because in order for you to date and to date well, the goal of your dating has to be to get yourself and the other person, and God willing, one day your children to heaven. And if you're not able to lead yourself to heaven yet, then you're not able to lead somebody else to heaven. So if you're still chronically struggling with any mortal sin, but especially struggling with watching filth on the internet, and you haven't been free of that for at least about 3 months, then you're not ready to date, right? And that would be the first thing I would say is you have to figure out how to control your own passions when you're alone by yourself before you
Mm.
can expect to control your passions around somebody who is probably somebody you consider beautiful and wonderful and you want to spend your life with them, right? So
Yeah.
that's the first thing. Be free from mortal sin. On the flip side of that, if you are living a life of grace and you have a regular prayer routine and you still struggle maybe with impatience or certain other venial sins, like that's a different story. Marriage may in that case be something that's good for you. Dating may be something that's good for you because if you're with somebody who's beautiful, beauty naturally elevates us and inspires us to do great things. So if
Yeah.
yeah, you have to walk carefully, and there's two extremes. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be good enough.
I'll speak to my experience a little bit. When I first started dating my now wife, I was pretty much an absolute disaster in life. And I think the only reason that she put up with that was because we had a history. We knew each other from high school. We had liked each other for years at that point, but had not dated yet because I knew I'd probably mess this relationship up. And then after high school, we did get together. We did start dating. And being with her really inspired me to want to be better in so many ways. Because I was like, I thought of her like she's so. First of all, she's really smart. I'm just going to talk about my wife now for the next 30 minutes. She's really smart.
Good.
She's obviously very beautiful. And I just thought, man, I had like not really a good job. I was working at warehouses. I wasn't going to school. I was not in a position where I was going to be able to support a family anytime soon. And then it was really through her help and also the help of her sister actually, who was like, "You need to sign up for school like right now. Like, go to a college nearby, sign up like right now." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that like over the weekend." And she's like, "No, no, no, like right now." I was like, "Okay." So it was through having someone to be better for that made me want to radically transform my life. And then obviously I radically transformed my life again when I came back to Christ. But you're right. Like it really does make you want to improve yourself, and it kind of forces you to, because it's like either you're going to work on these things that you know you have to work on, or you're going to risk losing this person who you love very much.
We have to be men of sacrifice. We have to be men of virtue these days. And having a woman that calls us to that and a woman that elevates us and inspires us is incredibly, incredibly powerful on that path.
Definitely. All right, let's see the next piece of advice here. Put your priorities first.
Yeah, it depends on what he means by priorities and your priorities. If he means prioritize first the kingdom of God and then all these things shall be added unto you, I would say that he agrees with Jesus and Jesus is never wrong. Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. It sounds like prioritize your priorities. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's give him a charitable interpretation. Let's say he's just referencing the gospel. So that's good advice.
Yeah. Awesome. Spreading the gospel on this random TikTok channel. For the next 5 years, focus on that one goal and execute it.
Yes. Yeah, I actually really, really agree with this. I think
Nice.
so. There's a virtue that's seldom talked about called simplicity. And what simplicity is, it's where, it's the opposite of complex. Simple is the simplex in Latin is the opposite of complex. And what complex is where there's many parts. There's duplicity, there's division within a person. Simplicity is the opposite of that. It's where you're one thing, you have one goal, you're one person, you're united, you're one, right? That's simplicity. And that's what Job is called in the Old Testament. It says that Job was a man innocent and simple. And so I think that oftentimes men try to say yes to too much, and they do it out of a good spirit, right? They're like, oh yeah, I can help with, my church's this thing, and I can help with my wife's, this thing, and I can do this and I can do this. And really, I think what I forget who said this, but somebody said the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no almost all the time, right? So it's like in your life, you get one thing that you get to be remembered for. You get one thing that you get to dedicate your entire life to building. You get somebody put it this way, that each preacher in their entire life gets one sermon that they preach over and over again, right? You get one message that you get to be remembered for. That's generally the way that it works. Maybe if you're exceptional, you can have two or possibly three with God's grace. But basically, everybody gets one thing, and you need to sacrifice everything for the sake of making that one thing happen, And just an example, even from my own life, I've really felt called for a while now that the reason God put me on earth was to help spread devotion to the rosary. And so I was teaching at a high school and I was helping the kids there to pray the rosary. I think by God's grace, that was really happening. But I just felt like God was calling me to expand my reach a little more. And so, yeah, not really having a financial plan, not really having a ton of money saved up in the bank, I just quit my job and started doing YouTube. And that's been the thrust of my channel. I do apologetic stuff, I do stuff for men. But the ultimate message that I want everybody to get out of any video that they watch of mine is that if you pray the rosary daily, Mary will take care of your problems, right? And especially if you're praying all four. It's October. Do it, guys. I've said it a few times. You will not regret it. but I've just sacrificed everything. A job that I liked, I've
Mm.
sacrificed a lot of things just to be able to try to make this happen. And God has been true to his words: seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you. And somewhat miraculous things. Some things are still in play, but there's some moving pieces now that I think are going to make this really, really yeah, God's just taking care of it. We'll put it that way. I'll have probably a video coming out in the next couple months explaining this part of the story, but it's still ongoing.
Nice.
So I'm not going to spoil anything. But yeah, say no to anything that does not help you become the type of man that you want to be, right?
Nice. Well, that's exciting. I'll have to keep an eye out on your channel to see what that announcement is.
What do you think about that? You think that's a good piece of advice there?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's obviously it's very vague, but there is something that everyone is working on currently. You should try not to get distracted from that because time goes by really fast and you don't realize it. And then the next thing you know, you're like 3 years down the line and you're maybe haven't made a lot of progress on whatever you're working towards, whatever that is. For you, like it's YouTube and obviously spreading the rosary and trying to make a living doing that, obviously, because you do have a family to support. So it's, if you were to just kind of sloth around and be like, yeah, I'll do that. Maybe I want to watch TV or maybe I want to go do these other things that are more fun or whatever in the moment. You'll find yourself down the line regretting that. So
Yeah.
focus is important for sure.
First up on my list, which is exciting, I need to get a new car. I don't know how to do that. That's the problem. And I'm really dreading all of the money leaving my bank account. Like, I can't muster up the courage to call this dealership because I don't know what to say. And I don't, oh my God, the hunchback. I don't, and I don't want my dad to call because like I'm trying to do things by myself lately, so I can learn things. Next up is I need to find a new apartment. My lease is up in 3 weeks and I don't have a place to live. The way that I'm not even stressed about where I'm gonna live is kind of iconic, honestly, because I have like much bigger fish to fry, but like I should have done this months ago. I'm also delighted to announce I still don't have health insurance. It's been 13 months. 13 months of just gambling with life, just seeing if I get hit by a car and have to owe the hospital millions of dollars. You guys know I haven't paid my bills in 2 years because I think I have ADD and a procrastination syndrome. So I owe water bills, a gas bill, and an electricity bill, which I'm assuming is probably going to be like $4,000. Please tell me that like this gets easier as you grow up, like remembering to do stuff and like actually doing them, because I can't live like this. Last but not least, I need a man, okay? I cannot be responsible for doing and paying for all of this by myself. Is this why people get married and in relationships, so that their expenses split in half? Because that sounds pretty good to me right now. I'm always just doing everything alone. Any Hizzle, I hope this makes you feel better about not knowing what you're doing in your life. Like physically not knowing how to do things. Like there's a lot of things I don't know how to do and I just don't do.
Wow.
There's a lot going on.
That's a lot. Yeah. I think one of the things that men have been deprived of as children is responsibility. If you want to have maturity, this is the way you do it. If you want to become mature, you have to take responsibility for things that are important to you and others that depend entirely upon you, right? That's how you become responsible, is you take on tasks that either succeed or fail based on your performance, and there's no security net, right? This is one of the reasons sports, I think, is really good for young men if they're done appropriately and in a good setting, et cetera, et cetera. It's like either you hit the shot or you missed it. And that's what determined if your team won or lost. Either you played really good defense or you didn't. And that's what determined if your team won or lost. And you can put the entire burden of responsibility on your own shoulders. And in a controlled way, you can learn to develop that virtue of maturity. But one of the things that can go wrong is people with good intentions, right, can just take care of everything for their children and baby them and never let them grow up and never let them take risks and never let them fall. And if you are constantly being taken care of, then you become habituated to the idea that you need to be taken care of. So this person, I think that what he needs is just somebody to actually authentically love him and tell him that he has much more power and much more control over his life than he thinks. And then he needs to go to confession. I think he's got some things going on there that Christ needs to heal first. But yeah, men don't realize the tremendous amount of power that they have. They don't
Hmm.
realize it. Each man who lives his life well saves 1,000 souls easily, right? Each man who lives his life well has an impact on the entire world. We don't realize that. We try to isolate ourselves and we think about how our actions just affect us or maybe the people immediately around us. But each action begets its like. So every time that you are virtuous, you're going to set an example and you're going to strengthen the body of Christ and you're going to lead more people to heaven. Each time you do something vicious, the opposite happens. You're going to set an example. You're going to instill that habit into your wife and children, whether or not they know it or whether or not you're aware of it. And so one man who lives his life well changes the entire face of the earth. That's just the way that it works. And this guy doesn't realize he has the extreme potential for good to do something wonderful. And so he's just focused on his own problems and he zooms in on those and then sees his own weakness and doesn't have the grace of Christ to overcome those weaknesses. And that's why he is where he is, you know?
One of the things that you said that's really, really, really meaningful and that I take to heart is that sometimes you didn't say this exactly, but I'm paraphrasing. Sometimes you just have to do hard stuff and you'll develop the character that it takes to do hard stuff. We tend to have this idea that, well, I'm not ready for that yet, so I'm not going to do that yet. We talked about this kind of with the kids, waiting to have kids. So, I'm going to wait until I'm ready. But the thing is, if you wait until you're ready, you're not going to be ready. And all you're doing is putting off something hard, which gives you the character of somebody who puts off things that are hard, which is not somebody who's ready to do something hard. So, and that's good advice for raising sons especially. They need to be accustomed to doing things that are hard, things that depend on them, things that are important. We want to shelter. I don't have kids, so I haven't experienced this yet, and I'm sure I'll have to work on this myself. But there's probably an instinct to want to shelter your children from pressure because you don't want them to stress out. But
Mhm.
sometimes learning how to deal with that pressure is very important because then when you grow up, you'll be able to face that pressure because you've dealt with situations like that before, and you won't end up with years of late payments on electricity bills and things like that.
Yeah, it's important to let kids do things and fail sometimes. It's
Hmm.
really important. Like my 2-year-old daughter, Celine, will have her clean up. She doesn't do a perfect job because she's two, but we always make sure that she's throwing her trash away and that she's helping us to, put dishes away or something like that. Just giving her small tasks so that she feels like she's a part of the family and that she's contributing. And also, we're instilling in her, even at the age of 2, the idea that she can accomplish things and that she has the ability to do things to help the family. And so, yeah, it's really important to give kids responsibility, especially early on.
And that's something that I wish I was raised with from an earlier age. If anybody's seen my interview with my grandparents, you'll know I was raised kind of by them, who were actually my foster parents growing up, kind of by my mom, and then later on in life by my dad separately. So it wasn't until I was with my dad that I was taught, no, you're going to have responsibilities. You're going to have to do things that you don't want to do, and you're just going to have to deal with that. But I was already maybe 13 by that time. So it was very late in my development that came into play. And I think if I would have had that earlier on in life, I would have really appreciated that because in my early adulthood, I didn't have the character or the practice of doing things that came with a lot of pressure that I just needed to face. So I did become avoidant of a lot of things and procrastinating, and so now those are all things that I'm still kind of working on undoing in myself. Is like, stop procrastinating, stop putting things off, stop distracting yourself when you have something difficult to do. And I think, yeah, if I would have had that earlier on, that would have been really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the benefits of growing up in the middle of the woods in Indiana is you have to learn how to drive a tractor and operate a chainsaw and
Nice.
all that stuff, which is good for young men.
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground today. I think I feel like I've learned a lot. I think I can go and be a better person now. Um, do you want to let people know the service that you provide and how they can access that?
Yeah, sure. So I have a coaching program for young men who are single, who want to be ready to be husbands and fathers. If you watch any of my content, I say this all the time, but Our Lady of Fatima said the final battle between the kingdom of heaven and Satan is over marriage and the family. And so if we want to win the family, we have to win fatherhood. That's the first priority. So that's what the coaching course is for. It's for young men who want to be ready to step into that role as a husband and as a father and be the Saint Joseph for your own holy family. And if you want to know more about that, maybe you can put a link in the description. There's a survey that you can fill out, and then you can get in contact with me, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I had a great time, and I feel like I actually learned a lot, honestly.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you. Yeah, God bless.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and until I see you next time, God bless y'all.